I'm probably, in terms of this year's playoffs, I'm probably, or this series, this round, this conference semifinals, I'm probably most fascinated by Boston, Milwaukee.
Yeah.
I think that to me is, in terms of matchup, potential adjustments, game-to-game variance, it's probably the most fascinating to me. And I said this yesterday. We were on, I can't remember which show we were on together, but we were talking about Giannis's struggles from the field the first couple games. And someone said something like, well, he's going to have a big game in game 3. And I said, we said that about Kevin Durant for 4 games. And we're now saying that about Giannis. So we're 6 games into this Boston playoff run. Maybe it's the Boston defense. Maybe the Boston defense is that good, because we're talking about probably the 2 best players in the world.
No, I agree. And I think I was the one that said it about Giannis. I said after game 1, they won that game despite the fact that's the worst offensive game he's going to have in this series. And then I don't know, it's probably a coin toss, game 1 and 2 for him. First half of game 2 was terrible, but he played very well in the second half. Yeah. So at the end of the day, they're probably about the same, but either way, he didn't play well in either one. And that's when you were kind of like, well, is he? Maybe it's time we start to realize this is just what Boston's going to do. I think the reason I have the belief he will, and I look at KD, as great as KD is, when you get into the playoffs and you're allowed a little bit more getting into guys, and they've got that many guys that fit the physical profile to get up chest to chest with him and push him around a little bit, Tatum, Brown, Grant Williams, Horford could even switch out, do a good job on him. I think Giannis, it's less likely you're going to be able to continually do it because of his strength and his stride. He's going to get, and even in game 2, first half, I mean, he was throwing some stuff up there, had no chance of going in, but he's going to get to that spot. So that's why I believe one of these games, and maybe it's game 3, maybe he gets 15 free throws at home on top of converting another 3 or 4 of the ones he's been missing. Right. Boom, you got a 35-point night. And that's kind of where I think he's a little bit different, the physical nature of his game, than like a guy like KD.
Yeah, I think my point was not that Giannis is not capable of scoring 40 and having an efficient scoring night against a great defense. I think what we do a lot now is we want to what's wrong with Harden? What's wrong with Giannis? What's wrong with Kevin? Instead of looking at the other side as a chance to sort of credit not just Boston's defense, but the uniqueness of like what ultimately is built as like a playoff defense. Switchable parts, a lot of size, a lot of strength, a lot of mobility. I can't remember in my career, and I played against great defenses and switching defense and all that. Like, I don't know that there's a better defense with their personnel and their game plan that's built for the playoffs than them in recent memory.
I completely agree with you, and I'm going to throw in another component to it all, and this is when I gave Ime Udoka a lot of praise yesterday and everything we did, because they changed coaches. I didn't know much about him other than his background, but then, so obviously I'm watching the new coaches early in the season, had a hard time feeling like what is his stamp. As the season wore on, it was obvious. So in addition to not only having the physical profile stable of players, anticipation and communication, it's all coaching. That's stuff that's ingrained day 1 of camp. You start with your switches, your talks, you're anticipating the switch, communicating on dribble handoffs, on, post splits like the Warriors run that kill everybody because people don't prepare for it the right way or enough. That started to be obvious to me. This is culturally ingrained in their head from the beginning of the season. That's coaching. And the fact that he's up the whole game, I sometimes have a problem with guys that sit there for 2/3 of the game. No change demonstrably. Every now and then they stand up, arms folded a lot. And I kind of just go like, are they not doing exactly the same thing I'm doing right now? Watching the game?
With a better seat.
Right, yeah, just exactly. And I watch him and I'm like, that's how I coach. Every single, your stamps on everything. I'm not saying you're like making the guys like robots, because you teach that and now go play the way we want to play. But you're up there seeing 10 guys on every trip. I feel like he does that, and that is obviously reflected in their defense.
How much is the no Middleton thing a factor? Because I feel like in the Bulls series, they were so much more talented. They were also just so much more locked in. That didn't seem to matter. But that's a big It's a big guy not being there.
Huge. One, he's a very good defender, but I think the other end of the floor, you need a guy that can get you a shot from 15 to 20 feet on the floor contested off the dribble, because that's a late possession. We had a bad possession, and now this guy just won the possession because he's 6'8" and can stop anywhere in that range of the floor. But it's just obviously not Giannis's wheelhouse. Drew can do that, but Drew's more like at the rim or a three. That's like Middleton is the answer to those kinds of possessions. So that's why they miss him. And I still pick the Bucks. I didn't know how long he's going to be out. I'm hoping he makes an appearance and make me have a better chance of being right on that pick. But I don't know if he's going to make it back. And I still picked the Bucks because of my belief in Giannis.
I don't know if I'm there.
I know. I'm definitely in the minority.
I'm not saying I'm a Bucks hater. This is the one series that I did not make a prediction about when I was on this week, and it's really hard for me.
How the hell did ESPN not corner you on that?
Because I gave like a secondary prediction. When my secondary prediction was that the winner of this series wins the Eastern Conference.
Do you still believe that? You think with how Miami looks?
I ultimately and I'm a Heat lifer. You know that.
Yeah.
I drink the Heat Kool-Aid. I have a hard time, given what we saw last year in the playoffs with the Bucks and with Giannis, given their record with the big three playing, Brook Lopez being back, their size, they have shooting. Like, I have a hard time seeing like them or the Celtics not beating Miami.
I agree with you.
And that's, I love Miami. And Miami, and we'll get to the Suns in a second, but Miami and the Suns are really, to me, like everything I love about basketball, where, it's the sum of the parts, right? It's a team. And I inherently, it's why I loved watching the Spurs back in the day. Yes, they had great players and stars, but their system, it was all about the team. And I think those two teams embody that more than anything.
Oh, you and I are on the exact same page that way. I think we did a segment yesterday, and you said that, and I said I completely echo what you're saying. Whoever wins that series, that's who I'm going to pick. I'm just shocked they didn't corner you on a pick of this series, because normally you'll find this out next season. Opening night, you're on the air, whatever. You got the second night, 8-game slate, whatever. And typically by the time you go on 11 o'clock Sports Center, they want to know who's going to win it all. Like opening night.
on opening night.
What do you think? Based on what you've seen, who do you like for the finals? Who's your MVP so far? Trust me.
I was doing MVP talks five games in the season. I'm like,
it's just exhausting, man. I agree with you on that series. Whoever
the
wins
one
it,
thing
I think
I've said, and I've been consistent on this both on the podcast and on ESPN for a good 2 or 3 months, and Tommy will co-sign this. My thing I've been consistent on is it has felt like for the last 2 or 3 months that, and this is obviously pre-Middleton getting hurt, but it's felt like a finals rematch to me. Mm-hmm. Like it's felt like a finals rematch. That's where we're headed.
Well, I'm on the record though. I went out on a limb. I like Golden State to get there. I like Golden State to get to the finals.
I have one Miami question. So we don't know when Kyle's coming back, but probably in the next week or so. With their depth, I mean, is there any world where like they're not playing guys that would be getting 15, 20 minutes a game on other playoff teams? Like, is there a world where they can overrun either of those teams just with the fact that like we actually don't know what they look like when they're all there, and we probably are going to get to that point by that next series, depending on that hamstring, like where they're all there. It's like Vic last night, for example. I think he's still getting better, but that's a guy that is going to play 10, 15 minutes a game for them, but would be, playing major minutes anywhere else. And so is that going to make a difference?
Yeah, we might both of us, it sounds like, might be completely just, underselling them when you watch them. And last night was impressive. And for all the reasons you just said, I mean, think about it. Duncan Robinson doesn't even play right now. All of a sudden they just, they get it Victor Oladipo back, an all-star. We were talking earlier about injuries and guys being out a while. Like sometimes, honestly, a guy will end up playing again. You're like, oh my God, I forgot they had Victor Oladipo. That's kind of how I felt when he started playing. Hero playing as well as he is. Lowry's sitting over there right now, not even playing. So the depth is a massive factor, because on a given night or a given series, it just gives one of the smartest guys in the league, Eric Spoelstra, more options on how to go about that. So
I don't doubt Spoelstra. I don't doubt the Heat. I don't doubt Jimmy Butler. I want to be very clear on that.
Massive butt coming. I can't wait to hear what this is.
The butt is here. Even with let's say Joel is healthy this whole series. Thumb, face, everything. He's healthy. Still think Miami's a better team.
Mm-hmm.
Still think they beat the Sixers.
Yep.
And in that case, like Joel's the best player in the series, right?
Yeah.
So some of the playoffs are like, do you have the best player? And you can make an argument at where Jimmy Butler stands in the hierarchy of the NBA. But going forward, like there's no way you could make an argument that the Heat definitively have the best player in any series they're going to play from here on out.
No, and you might even not be able to say that in Game 3 if Embiid comes back.
Right.
So, like, literally from this point forward every night, that's very true, because whether that's Embiid plays, and, look, it's a lot he's got to overcome, but let's assume he looks like himself. You won't be able to say it, and certainly not Milwaukee or Boston with Giannis and Tatum. No, you're 100% right. So, and I like the way you described earlier, and I say this about the Warriors all the time. When guys are out or missing or whatever, I say, man, the beauty about that team is as great as, and Steph Curry is a historically all-time great player, they are much more about the sum and the totality of what they are as a group than any individual piece. And that's why you can watch Steph sometimes in the playoffs and he's getting kind of mauled. They're letting guys maul him. And he has by his standards, a very mediocre night. And they still win because of what he does to defenses just by his presence and his movement and his motion. And it's just a beautiful thing to watch. I love basketball when it's done the way that I believe it's supposed to look, like beautifully with player and ball movement. And both of those teams do that.
Yeah. Again, team basketball, I probably should have brought up the Golden State Warriors, and they certainly fit in that category. But I sort of view Steph and what he does is generational. So, like, again, when you have a talent of that, like, I think there's a little bit of a differentiation between like the Suns with an older Chris Paul,
sure,
and a young Devin Booker, and the Heat with Jimmy Butler. Like, there's a little bit of difference because Steph is arguably, along with LeBron over the last, call it 10 years, like the face of the NBA. So there's a little bit. Let's jump to that series, actually, because I do want to talk about the Grizzlies a little bit. And, without sort of a historical reference to this group, not the grit and grind group, but this group. They lost last year in the first round. I think it's really hard to judge a younger group going through, in real time, going through their first potential deep playoff run.
Yeah.
Both and I remember this as a player on my own teams. 09 Magic is a great example of that. And then later on, specifically with like the Warriors, you kind of saw that evolution in 13, 14, 15 or whatever. But it's hard to sort of gauge it in real time. And then after the fact, you're like, oh yeah, it all sort of makes sense. So what are your kind of takeaways so far from that team through whatever it is, eight playoff games?
So obviously they now have a player that has taken his game to a level of legitimate superstar talent. And I watch them play, and I think they're incredibly confident. They seem really connected. I don't know Taylor Jenkins, but again, it's just from observations and listening to him speak. I'm big on that. When guys talk, are they saying something substantive? When I go, he's really got a grip on what's happening. He does. Clearly, they're connected to him. So there's so many things to love about their team. I do think they, is Ja Morant ultimately going to be, head and shoulders their best player? Is that the type of player that can ultimately get you past some of these teams we're talking about in the Western Conference, right? As great as he is. Yeah. And he's doing stuff like that, we talked about, like, he made 5 shots in a row at the end of that game. If he misses any one of those shots, all of them, incredibly high degree of difficulty, they probably lose. Right. That's how good he has been. But I also look at, okay, let's go historically and just look, even the last 20 years. Players like that size that play that way, where who do you put in that category? You say that's going to be enough to get all the way to the top. Because you got to think, okay, not only do you have Phoenix that's not going away anytime soon, Golden State's going to be here for a while. Denver's getting back Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. next year. They're going to be in the mix. Who knows what's going to happen with Utah? You think Dallas is going to continue to get better. So you think, well, is that enough? Is that going to be enough? A guy playing like the way he plays, is that going to be enough to climb the mountaintop? And that's kind of what I think when I watch him. It's spectacular as it is, it is more about him, I think, than it is about their group. Even though I know they had a great record when he was out, but when he's on the floor, and he's going to be, that's what it looks like. And I don't know, is that sustainable way to beat great teams?
The only example that I could come up with off the top of my head, and I was just looking for confirmation of this, it was in 06-07 with Tony Parker being the finals MVP that year. And it's obviously not as athletic a job, but similar in sort of, my game is predicated on being able to get to the paint, shoot floaters and layups. And of course, the caveat with that is he still had Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili,
very much in his prime. Tim
right.
Duncan,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. This is before they won in 14.
I actually think for me and I've thought about it. The example that comes to my mind is just because of the raw nature of the way they were attacking you and getting to the line and scoring inside the 3-point line as a guard would be more like D Wade.
Yes.
Miami team with an aging
06,
Shaq,
06,
a bunch of role players. He was the only legitimate superstar scorer. I mean, he beat the Dallas Mavericks basically in the mid-range and the foul line. He had, I think, two games in that series. He shot 20-plus free throws, and everything he did was at the rim, mid-range pull-ups. So I almost think like that and athletic ability, that to me is more like, and obviously he's more bigger than Ja, but that to me is more like the similar type of attacking. And he was able to get it done.
Is there anything in particular defensively you guys think Memphis is doing? I mean, I look at game one, for example. If Memphis gets a rebound, I think Golden State had 3 or 4 offensive rebounds before Clay hit that 3 to put them up. If they get a rebound, they're going there up 2-0. So is there anything defensively that they're doing that's kind of getting these guys out of sorts a little bit? Because it does feel, I mean, Poole's been great, but like it does feel like the Warriors have not played that game yet so far in the series.
I personally think if I'm Steve Kerr, I'm going in with these guys before game 3. We're watching film and take a look at the 20 possessions a game that they are not playing their style offensively. They are helping Memphis guard them with quick shots, tough shots. And look, I'm going to put a lot of that on Klay Thompson. I think he came back from his layoff. It was so obvious in the beginning, like, man, this guy's trying so hard to prove I'm back. Look who I am. Don't forget about me. Like this is, you got left off the 75-75 team. Like all that was in the air, and it was like, man, you're just pressing so bad, and it's not the way you guys play. And then he started to calm down, and then that last month it looked like Clay again. I feel like he's kind of back there because it's the playoffs, and I'm trying so hard. The other night I think he took 5 straight shots for them without anybody else really touching the ball, because he wanted so badly to get going. And to me, I think if I'm watching film, I'm Steve Kerr, and I'm like, and you put in a tape of us at our best, ball player movement, this is what it looks like. They're not guarding that. This makes us guardable. And I think that to me is more about them than it is about Memphis.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you on that, because in the parts of the game that I've really gone back and watched multiple times and broke down, Memphis is still miscommunicating a ton.
Yeah.
I'll give you a great example of this. So, like, they're up, I think it was 91-89. There's a missed shot. They get the offensive rebound. I think Wiggins got the offensive rebound. And they don't match up with Steph off the offensive rebound. He banks in the 3 from the top. Very next possession, they come down. Steph goes to set a little slip screen and pops out to the left wing. They miscommunicate on the switch. He gets an open 3. Couple minutes later, Steph gets the outlet pass or a long rebound. He dribbles up the court. There's like 2.5 minutes to go in a 1-possession playoff game. And Memphis is pointing at each other to pick up Steph.
Yeah.
Now, he shot it off the side of the backboard. He missed the shot. But, like, those mistakes, like, in aggregate, over 7 games, you can't beat the Warriors playing that way. So that's where, to your point, I agree with you. I think it is more about the Warriors getting back to, this is how we play. We can break down a defense with our style.
I completely agree, and I've said this before. I could do a pretty nice dissertation or write a thesis on Golden State Warriors guard screening action. Their entire system is based on guard screening action. And then Draymond's the guy that's got the CPU, like Terminator, processing. This ball's going to go where it needs to go. And when he was out, I felt he missed out even more than his defense because
100%.
Because I saw guys getting out of their lane, and it's because Draymond's going to go. He's going to look, read both sides action at the same time, and go, okay, no, I'm ruling this out right now. We're going here. And that means maybe Damian Lee doesn't come off and shoot a three that I watched him shoot before he came back because Draymond's like, no, we're going to do this because this is better action. This is more advantageous. So his ability to process that, but it's all predicated on all of their guards, Poole now in that category as well. Their split action, their guard dive, guard flare, all of that stuff. And it's so fascinating because that is the essence of why their offense is so hard to guard. They're willing to move, which a lot of guys aren't. Those guys are willing to run miles a night, just like JJ used to. And they are willing to screen. They're also willing, this is what I always describe, I used to tell my AAU team this all the time, you've captured something beautifully as a coach. And let's say you play for me, and I say to you, I need you to cut as hard as you can 6 consecutive times knowing that most likely you will not see the ball. Are you willing to do that? Because if you're willing to do that, we're going to create something beautiful here.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is I have to create trust as a coach. When it is your turn, meaning you're the next pass, you're the guy, we did everything we're supposed to because that ball's supposed to come to you now because you're open, it's going to come there. And then the expectation is we have to be able to trust you to do the same thing. When you build those two things amongst your team, that's what Golden State's been able to do. But they get away from it sometimes. And and it looks more like most of the other teams in the league. And now they're guardable. And I think they've done that. And think about what we're talking here. In a tight series, you just give 8, 10, 12, 15 possessions like that over the course of a game. Boom, that's the difference. That's a 6-point win rather than a 6-point loss like they had the other night. And so I think for me it's very, very watchable on film for that group. And that's why I think they're going to be a lot better at home.
Completely agree with you on the Draymond comment because it was blatantly obvious in January and February how much they missed him offensively.
Yeah.
And you can say whatever you want about his finishing or his shooting, but he is so important to what they do and the sort of symbiotic relationship that him and Steph have of his awareness of where Steph is and what Steph is going to do. He just makes things easier for everyone. And I think this is a natural, you mentioned you picked the Warriors to win the West, but I think it's a natural segue into the Mavs-Suns series. So why are you such a Suns hater?
Here we go.
Well, for the same reason that you can't stand Alonzo Mourning. It's really kind of all connected, I think, JJ.
Right. Do you find this, though?
Do you think?
No, this is Stephen A. and I were talking about this yesterday, but it's like, I even a simple tweet, tweet out, it's like, I'd like to raise my hand, get everyone's attention, and acknowledge that this player for this team did a really good job tonight.
Yep.
Congratulations to this player and this team.
Yep.
And it's like, what about whomever? I mean, I could be talking about the fucking Duke basketball team, and somebody's going to be like, why aren't you giving the Raptors enough credit?
It's exhausting.
It's
the most exhausting part of the job.
It happens
It's
to the
exhausting.
Raptors a lot. They have a great fan base, but their fan base.
Well, I got. How about this?
It's
One
because
day,
they're in Toronto, dude. Of course they feel slighted.
I come home one day, and look, and this is another conversation you and I can have. I'm dying to pick your brain because I definitely have not embraced the social media component the way that I should have because of these reasons, right? And I got into it. Right, ESPN basically kind of made me go on Twitter a number of years ago. And I was like, okay, reluctantly did it. And within a day, I'm in a heated 2-hour conversation argument with some dude that's, who knows where this guy is.
He's 15 years old.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
He's definitely 15.
Or 35. His mom's yelling at him to pick a skateboard up and feed his goldfish. And, and I'm having a basketball conversation with you? Like, I wanted to go find this guy. And I was like, okay, I'm out. And I got back on, but I don't engage. Before the postseason this year, my wife made me, I think I've had 6 Instagram posts ever. She's like, you're going to start doing it. I'm like, okay. So I did one right before the playoffs. Hey, from Seaport, I took a picture. I'm like, hey, man, excited every day. You're going to be hearing from me. I'm putting videos out there. I've tweeted a lot, way more than I ever have. I haven't done any videos yet. But anyway, one day, I walk in the house. This is years ago. My wife's like upset. I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, Somebody created a I hate Tim Legler Facebook page. I'm like, what?
So I'm like, why are you looking at that stuff? I told her, I was like, do not Google me.
Do not Google me.
Do not Google me, please.
Don't
There's going to be something so mean about
Don't read
you.
the comments.
Right,
Don't read the
right.
comments
Or
ever.
we have we're dog lovers. We have pups, or now we have a 5-month-old. Like, do not. They're going to say horrible things. But and the reason, so anyway, I got to the source of that particular thing and what that was about, and it was about that year me saying, with I don't know a month ago in the season, the Bulls in a tight race to make the playoffs as an 8 seed or whatever, and me saying they're not going to make the playoffs. And they didn't make the playoffs. And I still got that page. Now, look, somebody creating the page is one thing.
Yeah.
Thank God he didn't get a couple million followers. Like, now you got a problem, right? If people are signing up to be part of that hate talk. So, no, it's the most exhausting part of it, man.
We have had a good-natured fun with a couple of different fan bases on Twitter, of course. The Pelicans, of course, being one for me. But, what I've really found, and again, I was semi-joking about the 15-year-old trying to have a basketball discourse conversation with someone who has been around the game for almost 50 years. It's whatever. But what I've found is there are a lot of really smart, analytical podcast writers, video creators on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube, and I consume their content, and I try. We try, of course, to acknowledge them, and done a couple podcasts or whatever. But I genuinely mean this. Like, there are a lot of people who really are obsessed with the NBA and do a really good job of educating themselves and learning and asking questions, and are willing to admit when they're wrong. I'm willing to admit when I was wrong. I mean, I was right about the Bulls. I was right about the Nets. Like,
He's been right a lot recently. He's not been shy about it.
He's gonna need rotator cuff surgery soon.
The second he was right, he decided.
Hey, look, doing this. He's new to this game, but this broadcasting game. I've been doing it for a while. And look, I mean, you're not going to hesitate to trumpet your horn a little bit when you get them right.
You got to keep the receipts. And by the way, I'll keep the wrong receipts too. I'll admit
own them when you're wrong. Look, my record historically, picking every series, every year, I'm in career-wise, 21 years, I'm in the 90% range. I might get most of them right. And when I don't, stand right up and you take your shots from people. But what you're so right on is when you lay out your basis for why you're making a decision about a player or critique about whatever it may be, or you're praising a guy. Like, I can't praise this player without the fans of this player telling me I'm dissing this guy. I'm like, well, actually, I was only talking about this guy. And that's the most exhausting part of like what we do. But look, man, bottom line is this: if you're watching games, you know what you're seeing, you're prepared, you can articulate and communicate it. I'll lay my reputation against anybody's when it comes to that. I know what I'm watching, and what my opinion is based on a solid belief. I'm not just going to throw a pick out or a hot take. I'm not going to do it. This is what I really believe, and this is why. And hopefully, it makes sense, and it's coming from an educated point of view because I know what I'm watching when I watch basketball.
That's fair. In that good spirit of not having to deal with Twitter fan bases, let's actually talk for 2 minutes real quick about Suns Mavs so that the Suns Twitter and the Mavs Twitter don't get on us.
Suns Twitter loves us, so we have to keep them happy.
They're probably not very happy with me. They been ripping me. I don't really look, so I don't know.
They in general, the Suns rip the national media. That's just basically what it is.
And we talk about them a lot.
They upset me last night.
The Suns Twitter did. Or the
Suns team.
Oh, why?
I didn't like some of the stuff at the end as much as I love Devin Booker. Love Devin Booker.
Yeah.
I don't like holding the follow through exaggerated amount of time up 30.
Yeah.
I just don't like that kind of stuff. He did it twice in a row. Just standing there holding it well after the ball's through the net or like taking it out of bounds. He's still standing there. I feel like a guy like that, I feel like should be above that.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I feel like, and I'm not saying a guy that just got in, that's on the end of their bench, that got some time in a playoff game at the end is going to do that, obviously. But I just feel like, all right, man, make your shot, run back. And that thing got out. I mean, that really escalated to take a line from Anchorman. Really escalated quickly out there. I mean, a guy got killed with a trident last night. I watched it. Right? I mean, it really, because it was like a 6-point game, then it was 25.
Yeah.
And Devin was part of that. And I don't know, I just didn't like the over-exaggerated. There was look. I don't even mind all the talking. There was a lot of talking. It's clear that they do. They're going at Luka so hard on defense, and they're talking to him the whole game, and they're trying to get in his head because they know he is the entire show, and they're trying to whatever they can. And I totally cool with that. It's fine. I just felt like you guys are the number one seed. You're the best record in the league. You lost in the finals last year. You have greater aspirations than winning a game against the Dallas Mavericks in the first round where you're getting all this strutting and posing and posturing. I don't know. To me, it just – and I'm not going to – it's not going to affect the way I cover them or what I predict because I love their team. I love the way they play. Absolutely love it. I just didn't like that. It's like you're 2 games in to this whole ride. You know what I mean? I shouldn't say that. They won the first round, but I mean 2 games into this series, like, all right, man, just – enough with that. It's a blowout. Let's just win the game, get on to the next game. I don't know. I wasn't a fan of that.
I will take sort of the opposite approach here, and this is coming from someone who has held up their fair share of follow-throughs in regular season games. I think I've sort of changed my – again, at Duke, I was out of control with this, and then I kind of was like, maybe I shouldn't show emotion on the court, and maybe I shouldn't talk shit. I think that changed, and a lot of it changed – with my just general understanding of what it is we do, which is we entertain, which is why I have no problem with Draymond being the gladiator in the arena and embracing the villain role. I think it's fucking hilarious. Yeah. I really do. I don't have a problem with Ja Morant dancing while Desmond Bane is shooting a step at 3 because it's part of who he is. Yep. I get that. And with Devin in particular, like part of who he is, we've talked about it a bunch on the pod. We talk to guys that talk shit. We talk to Kevin Durant. We talk to Joel Embiid. Who talks the most shit in the NBA? Devin Booker. Like, that's part of who he is. And so, like, if a player is acting out of nature, then I'm kind of questioning, like, what's going on here? But if it's in a player's nature and that's part of what gets him to tick, then I'm good with it. And look, we can talk about sportsmanship. That's a whole separate conversation. But I hope you understand what I'm saying there.
100%. Yeah. And look, and honestly, it's probably even more valid because you are, just out of the league. I've been out of the league a long time. So, my perspective of certain things is going to be a little bit different than yours with regard to that. I just felt like watching them and Suns fans, listen up. My first points in the NBA were scored in a Phoenix Suns uniform.
That's right.
So I have been praising your team nonstop all year. You've been, by a wide margin, the best team in the league. It's not close. They're on a shelf by themselves all season. The Warriors getting whole, getting Clay back healthy, and then this component of Jordan Poole, what he has become is kind of why now I look at them and I say I kind of think they can get to the finals. I love everything about the Suns. I just, in the moment last night watching it, I felt like it was almost like the year that the Wizards won a first-round series and they put onto the second-round T-shirts after the game, right? And you're kind of like, all right, man, and almost understood it in that situation because it's like, there's no track record there as an organization. And, but it's like at the same time, it's okay. If you're really playing for something bigger, within the moment, it's not as big. And look, don't get me wrong. He hits that shot to go up 1 inside of a minute, and they take time out. Hold that thing the entire time out. Stand out there for 3 minutes, and dude don't even go over to the bench, right? I get it. And when you talk about yourself doing it, it was more in the moments I just described. That's a big – you're not doing that up 25, JJ. You're not holding that up 25 in a regular season game or a playoff game.
Where does this Chris Paul stretch rank?
Well, I don't want to belabor this point.
Okay.
I just want to. This is something I've been thinking about ever since the T-Wolves jumped on the scores table, and I gave a very passionate take on this podcast about it. And I've been thinking about it a lot since, and I think about, like, in baseball, you win one wild card game and they go nuts and they throw champagne. Your Michigan is ranked 5th in the country. They go play an unranked Wisconsin team in Madison. They win the game. Wisconsin is 7-11 in the conference, and they storm the floor. For some reason, like, the NBA is held to a different standard with this, and I don't want to belabor it, but I just want to make that observation, when we talk
Fair.
about how our group of athletes is sort of allowed or not allowed, like what is appropriate to celebrate,
Right.
what is not appropriate to celebrate. It's across nearly every other sport. Like you acknowledge sort of the small victories along the way, and for some reason, like we're trapped in this ring culture where we can't celebrate unless it's like a championship.
I have to just make.
And you
one
can
quick-
disagree with it, but
No, I don't actually. And I think what you just got me to realize was maybe I didn't articulate why it bothered me last night. I don't think it is even what I just said. I really you guys you're playing for something bigger. You know what it really was? You are clearly so much better than the team you're playing.
That's a fact.
That's really I think more for me what it was.
Yeah.
Like if he did that exact same thing in the conference finals against Golden State, I definitely would not have nearly as much a problem with it.
Yeah.
This is now two heavyweights. You look at each other in the eye. This is the team. This is the brand of the
kicking
NBA.
your ass. I'm
We're
gonna
about to
let you know
kick your
about it.
ass.
Yeah.
And this is important for us to get this opportunity to not only get to the finals and finish the deal we didn't last year, but it's to get past you, specifically Golden State. I just would have much less problem. This is a team in Dallas that we talked about yesterday. It's more like a one-man band. You can't beat a great team that way, as great as Luka is. They're so much better than Dallas. That, I think, actually is probably why it bothered me more. It's almost like, and I know it's professional sports, but it's almost like, it's like you're a bully. You're picking on this team. They can't beat you. You're up 25, and here we are.
Yeah. It's a fair point, by the way. Tommy?
CP.
I think
Yeah.
it's a great
Yes.
question.
Because
it's a
at this
great
point,
question.
I mean, take last night, but then also the 14 for 14 closing out. We have to shout out the Pelicans because we haven't taped an episode since the series ended. I mean, if he doesn't go crazy like that, who knows what happens?
There's 2 games that he single-handedly swung in that series.
Yes.
Single-handedly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Game
where does
3,
this? So
Game
where does
3
this?
and Game 6.
This is a first ballot Hall of Famer, everything like that. We don't need to get into all that. Where does this rank in terms of most impressive things he's done in his career?
I'm going to be honest, what he has done in the 2 games we're talking about, and last night, maybe because it's fresher than the Pelicans game, that might be the best offensively Chris Paul's ever played. Think about that. Like last night, he was legitimately unguardable during that stretch that the game got separation. And look, you're at home, you're in a 1-possession game. Luka's playing great. You get that thing stays at a 1-possession game inside of 3 minutes, and they have him. Anything can happen now because the game's going to slow down. And they got the best player, individual offensive player. So for Chris Paul to do what he did in the beginning of the fourth quarter, middle of the fourth quarter, is as impressive as just about anything I've seen him do in his career. And obviously the Pelicans game going perfect. He is fascinating to watch how good he is, particularly at his size, to do what he does offensively in the way that he's taken over these games at his age. I mean, it's really incredible. And I honestly pray that he just stays healthy for this entire thing, man. Because he's had some tough luck, and he needs to be healthy on the biggest stage with the best team to see if they really are, going to be able to get it done. Because if anybody deserves to have one of those on their resume, it's him.
I was looking up the other day because Mad Dog was trying to tell me he wasn't a transcendent player and up and down. So this, whatever that was 2 weeks ago, I was just like looked up and I'm like, I played with Chris in the playoffs, and I'm like, man, dude, I feel like Chris was always better in the playoffs. And I looked it up, and like the numbers clearly back that up. Whether it's points, rebounds, assists, field goal percentage, all that stuff. And since he has been on the Suns, and particularly this year, like I am absolutely in awe of what he's doing. One guy I want to touch on the Suns, and we don't have to talk about him, but I just want to touch on him real quick. To me, the guy that unlocks everything, Mikel's great, all defense, versatile offensive player, CP and Book, fantastic closers, scorers, shooters, facilitators, playmakers, all that stuff. But to me, the guy that unlocks that team in the playoffs is Deandre Ayton.
For sure.
He is so good offensively, and against a team, let's say like Golden State, who is going to probably switch a lot, and potentially the Celtics in the finals, like his ability to, and he's done it all season, to punish those mismatches in the post is really sort of the separator for me about what what is so good about this Suns team.
He's okay. So typically in the modern NBA, that spot is either a guy that's like super multidimensional, that's an MVP type guy like
Joel,
Jokic,
Giannis, right.
Right, those
Yeah,
guys.
Giannis, he plays 5,
or pick, dive, lob,
Yep.
pick, dive, lob, pick, dive, lob all night. And I mean, even a guy like Rudy Gobert is an all-star pick, dive, lob all night long. And then you get this dude that's 7 feet with these hands that can not only pick, dive, lob, he can pick, pop, throw it to me in the post. I'm pretty good down here. I'll get something quality for myself. His touch really belies and defies logic about what 7-footers coming into the league look like and do that are athletic. He's so skilled. I actually coached against him on the AAU circuit and the Under Armour circuit, and I saw him early on, and it was just obvious, like
It was obvious.
It's just because you walk in the gym right away, he's the tallest kid in the gym, and you're just like, man, okay, so now your eyes are drawn to that. And then you just watch him move and run and his
Balance,
touch,
the coordination, the
and
feel.
then he got into the league, and there were times last year even like Ayton would go like 6 for 7. I'm like, well, why isn't he not like 12 for 15? I don't understand the lack of touches or making him a priority offensively. I feel like
They've done a good job this year.
much better this year, and he took 20 shots in the first game, 20, and so completely agree.
Some of that I think too is I was thinking about this yesterday, and Nikias wrote I don't know his last name, but I follow him on Twitter.
Duncan.
Yeah, Nikias Duncan. Yeah, he wrote a great article about that partnership with CP, and some of that. So he'd averaged 20 the year before Chris got there. Last year dipped to 15 or whatever. So I think some of that is just like CP. It's that trust,
Definitely.
and CP
Definitely.
teaching him how to manipulate pick and rolls and all that stuff. Like they've unlocked something there.
No doubt. And by the way, we didn't even mention it, but like Oklahoma City, what he did in Oklahoma City might be one of the greatest things he's done in his career. That team had
Doesn't get talked about enough.
that team had no business, that roster, doing what they did. That's 100% his influence and his game.
100%.
Right? Both of those things. Come on. By the way, real quick, we talk about Ayton and the Bellman at the hotel where I'm staying at Seaport. It is, I mean, I would say he's the biggest Mavericks fan of all time, but you become close to doing it justice to how much this guy loves Luka Doncic. And every day, every single day, I see Luka. He follows me to the elevator, and then I get in the elevator and I go upstairs. And I came in after the first game. He went out, had his jersey on, watched the game. I saw him at the hotel the next day. He's hey, I'm not worried about it. I said, well, you kind of should be a little worried about it. Like, if you want to know the truth. He goes, Wade's not going to play like that again. I said, well, yeah, he kind of is. That's like you get hit by Tyson with his right hand and go, well, he's not going to hit me that hard with his left hand. Like, yeah, no, it's going to be just as hard the next time. Like, I'm like, you're just totally dismissing. You're not familiar with Deandre Ayton's game if you think that was just like, we weren't paying attention to Ayton tonight. It's like, no, it's kind of a steady diet of what he brings and the way you now have to guard them and what that means for Crowder and Bridges and Booker and all these guys on the perimeter because of his threat, in the middle of the lane with his touch. It's fun to watch. And he seems like a great kid. I love his interviews. He's just, I don't know. They found the perfect player for what they want to do.
Perfect. One thing on the Mavs real quick, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday. I want to be as succinct as possible with this question. And so I was thinking about, and we were talking about yesterday, sort of the ideal lineup that you would put around Luka. Because one of the, it's not a problem, but one of the inherent sort of byproducts of Luka is that he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot, and not just a lot, but for a lot of the possession. So he's going to have the ball on nearly every possession, and then for that possession, he's going to have the ball. And he is as good as anyone, as we've seen, in manipulating things and getting the right matchup and then manipulating that matchup. And then eventually, some of those passive, it's not that straight downhill pick and roll lob to Dwight Powell. It's like you got 5-6 seconds on the clock when you get the ball. So there's inherently in how he plays, there's a byproduct that is sort of a challenge, if that makes sense. And that's not a knock on Luka. So how do you sort of think about the right players to put around him?
Man, I'm worried about, because I love watching him play. He's so immensely talented and strong and just, I don't know, tough-minded. I'm worried that will he ever, cede control enough to another great offensive player if they ever get one of those. Because, look, especially when he's a really good player, he's not a great offensive player. Jalen Brunson has had a great run, and I have all the respect in the world for Jalen Brunson. He's not a great offensive NBA player. he's going to need another great offensive player in that 6'7" to 6'9" range that can get his own shot, that can really score. Like Cable giving you 20, 25 like every night. Kristaps is more of
a Jayson Tatum. If you will.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, Jayson Tatum's a Brandon Ingram, even a Brandon Ingram type of guy. That's that guy that Luka is willing to allow that to happen. That's what I worry about. Guys like Luka, profile-wise or mentally, psychologically, they just only trust with themselves and they're in control. And it's like, are you willing to do that? And until he does have that breakthrough, first they have to add that player. And then he has to be willing to do that and say, we're going to do this together. Because it's not going to be enough to beat great teams playing the way he plays, as entertaining as it is. And that's what I worry about going forward.
It's historic what he's doing in terms of his playoff production. It's historic. There's no one else that has done it.
How good he is.
Whatever it is, he's up to now 33 point whatever points per game, 8 point something assists, 8
and
point
it feels
something
like it can
rebounds.
go higher. It feels like
but it's to some of it is like making those adjustments. But
Wait,
also
you played against them.
I played with him.
That's what am I thinking? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. So did you? So
briefly,
is he? I mean, when I watch on TV, I'm going. It's not like he's got a ton of muscle definition. He looks like he's just an absolute country strong horse. Like
he's
the way guys.
We
teased
him a little bit when he came on the podcast about his body, but there's like skinny Luka, there's skinny Luka memes. Like he actually is like solid. He's not like he takes his shirt off and it's not at all what you expect. But he's got like a really strong base.
Man, guys ride him to the rim.
Yeah.
And he's completely unaffected.
He's so strong.
Big, strong. Like last night he was backing Cameron Johnson into the post, and at one point I saw all of the air leave Cameron Johnson's body. Like he's actually the owner on the other side of the floor.
Oh, was the other one? Okay.
He went boom, 3 times in the sternum.
Yeah.
And each time, like the life is leaving Cameron Johnson. I'm going, Cameron Johnson's he's pretty put together guy. And it's like Luka's just like unaffected by whatever's on him, dragging people to the rim and finishing through contact. It's amazing to watch because he doesn't. I now understand he has to be that strong. It took me a while to get to the point to understand how he could be, just looking at him, how he was that strong.